Yo, what's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today is the day where I dive into the current 3v3 meta and talk about which classes are strong, which classes are weak, and the overall story of how people are treating these different classes and adapting to the meta as the patch rolls out. So, you know, I'm kind of just going to dive into this. You guys seem to really enjoy this series where I just turn on the camera and talk about these classes. There's not going to be a huge format. It's just going to overall be something that it's going to come from my experiences of playing at the highest ratings against these top players, these tournament teams, and all these types of people, right? So, you know, first things first is I do want to talk about the patch 7.25 rollout, like when it was first launched, and kind of the story of how we got to where we are now. I think that overall people are very interested, but not everyone is too happy with the patch. And at the beginning of the patch, we were seeing, you know, some strong classes, but in particular, there was like one comp that was just very, very strong that everybody, you know, kind of dealt with, and that was called WLS. So if people don't know what that is, it's Arms Warrior, Affliction Warlock, Restoration Shaman. So what had happened is that not only did all three of those classes get immense buffs in their output, so like Affliction Warlocks do way more damage than they did in 7.2, Arms Warriors do way more damage than they did in 7.2, and Restoration Shamans do more healing. Not only that, so like it's normal to deal with a huge amount of damage and healing coming out from that comp, but there's a new PvP talent that Affliction Warlocks had where they could actually use their Demonic Gateway, and it would be like a 60-yard Demonic Gateway, and the cooldown was pretty low. That's been nerfed recently, but that crazy amount of damage output, and then also having that gateway, which if used well, you would never be able to kill the WLS team. It would be very rare to, you know, to be able to do that. That kind of synergy between classes allowed for a comp that was nearly unbeatable, and it felt like that for a lot of different rank 1 players that were fighting against really good WLSs, is that they could not lose, or they could not win against WLS. So, you know, moving on, we've seen a lot of different tuning changes to these classes specifically, and also a couple buffs to some other classes I'll get into in a little bit. But overall, WLS is definitely not as relevant as it is at the beginning of this patch, so as the weeks have rolled out, you've definitely seen a lot less of that comp specifically, because Affliction Warlocks do a lot less damage than they did at the beginning of the patch. Arms Warrior has been nerfed multiple times. Like, even, you know, me playing with Arms Warrior as a mage, I feel like Arms Warrior is a lot weaker than my other options from other classes. So I definitely feel like Arms Warrior was over-nerfed, and even Affliction Warlock might be over-nerfed, because the problem that I'm seeing now is that since Affliction Warlock is so weak and people don't really play them anymore, it definitely feels like Mage is getting really strong. So you're not seeing a whole lot of WLS, but you're also not seeing any Warlocks in general. You're seeing a lot of different comps that rely on Moonkins, Rogues, Mages, Windwalkers, these types of classes, Demon Hunters. You even see Warriors sometimes, but they're so limited now. It feels like they only play Turbo, and they play with a Demon Hunter, right? So they play Arms Warrior Demon Hunter, or Arms Warrior Enhancement Shaman. It feels like Arms Warrior definitely was a little bit over-nerfed, and they need specific classes in order to be good now, whereas I feel like last patch in 7.2, they were a little bit more versatile, and, you know, after a couple tuning nerfs, not where they are now, like before a couple nerfs, but also after a couple nerfs, so like a pretty balanced point. I feel like Arms Warrior is in a pretty good spot where they could play a lot of different comps. But moving on, I do want to talk about like the uprising of Mage. So Mage right now, all the specs are viable: Fire, Frost, Arcane. They're all really good. You can play them at tier 1 levels. You can get rank 1 with each one of the specs. You can play whatever comp you want, really, and it just depends on like what comp you want to play in order to define which spec you're going to play. But it definitely feels like Mage in general is played very well right now, because I think Mage synergizes. It's strong, but it also synergizes really well with some of the classes out there that are very strong, and in my opinion should be nerfed a little bit. So the first one I want to talk about, and why Mage is being played more, is because I feel like Sub-Rogues and Windwalker Monks are extremely strong right now. So Subtlety Rogues overall do an insane amount of burst damage in cheap shots. For some reason, like, I got opened on a few times in an RBG. This is just one example, obviously. It's not really applicable to all of the PvP, but I remember I got opened on in one cheap shot by a sub-rogue. He killed me as a mage. He killed me from 100 to 0 in a 4-second stun out of the opener. And I thought that was really crazy. I think that there's a lot of burst damage nerfs not a lot of, but some burst damage nerfs coming out for sub rogues pretty soon on their agility template, which means that their damage is overall going to go down. They have a huge amount of like pressure and burst damage, which is great, but I think that definitely means that there's going to be a lot of struggles for people like me who play Arcane Mage to deal with sub rogues. It feels like a direct counter, but even more so because they feel a little bit overtuned right now. I think that Windwalker monks, in my opinion, are doing pretty well right now because they have so much damage available. They really just, if you play Windwalker monk at the top level, like Seth Curry, Chun-Li, even Visions, even though I don't play against Visions ever, but like those Windwalker monks very rarely make mistakes. And as an Arcane Mage, like I die in stuns, so when I fight against sub rogues and I fight against Windwalker monks, they both do stuns on a consistent basis, and they also have a huge amount of damage, so they don't even like need their teammate to kill me, which is really crazy to me. It feels like if I have a healer healing me and I have a melee hitting me, I feel like I should not be dead unless there's two players killing me, right? And then there's CC going out and stuff like that. But it definitely feels like sub rogues and Windwalker monks can just solo me, and that's pretty crazy in my opinion. It makes Arcane, it's specifically weaker. I'm not complaining about that. I just think that overall sub rogues and Windwalker monks are just very strong right now, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to relay. But it does actually make my class weaker, which is not a huge deal. I mean, Arcane Mage has like a huge skill cap potential, so I'm seeing a lot of Frost Mages right now because Frost allows for a huge amount of burst damage with the Ebon Bolts, with the Orbs, with the Common Storm, Ice Nova combo, stuff like that. And that synergizing with those sub rogues or with those Windwalker monks really do pretty well. So I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of Windwalker monks, a lot of sub rogues, some Demon Hunters, Enhancement Shamans, a little bit less because they were nerfed, but like I'm seeing a lot of just like Rogue Mage, Windwalker Monk Mage, and overall just comps that kind of cater towards those burst windows that, you know, sometimes do CC, sometimes not. You know, I'm seeing a lot of RMD, a lot of Windwalker Mage, Resto Druid, even Windwalker Mage Priest, or I played Demon Hunter Holy Priest Mage today, and that did pretty well, but we only fought mages. So it definitely feels like since the Affliction Warlock and the Restoration Shaman and the Arms Warrior comp, or even just individually, like since those were nerfed so hard, it feels like the Mage combos and the Rogue combos don't really have any answer to them because the classes that counter those specific strong classes are just weak at the moment. And last but not least, I do want to talk about a class in particular that I think is definitely one of the strongest, if not the strongest caster right now, and that's going to be Moonkin. So Moonkin overall is probably the tankiest, high burst damage, but you can also like stop their burst damage. It feels like Moonkin overall is just the most versatile like caster out there. I feel like if you replaced Moonkin for a mage, if you replaced mage for Moonkin in any comp, I feel like it would do probably pretty close to better, if not better. I think there's obviously small niches that mages would be better in, but I feel like Moonkins overall, like they don't die very well. They do a huge amount of damage. They have a spammable CC through clone, right? So you can clone similar to polymorph. Like when Moonkins are critting people for like 2 million, 2.5 million without incarn sometimes, I feel like that's a really crazy amount of damage, and they can also dampen you. You know, it's really, really hard to deal with Moonkins and kill them, and it's just a pretty solid counter to Mage a lot of the time, I feel like, because mages can't sheep them, they can't be peeled, and it's also really hard to kill a Moonkin as a mage. So I think the meta right now, if I were to lay out the top 5 damage classes like for DPS itself, would probably be Mage, Sub-Rogues, Windwalker Monks, Demon Hunters, and Moonkins. Okay, and then I like with Arms Warrior pretty close, but not quite there. And then I also think that for healers, I'm seeing a lot of Restoration Shaman. I'm seeing a lot of Holy Priest, and I'm seeing some Resto Druid, but not much. I rarely ever see Pallies. Like I think I've only fought one Paladin. That's Kappa the Brain, he was on my YouTube channel a couple days ago. And then not seeing many Mistweaver monks lately because they were kind of nerfed. Their Way of the Crane was nerfed, I think. I think that's right. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that one. But I definitely am seeing a lot less Mistweavers, a lot more Resto Shamans, a lot more Holy Priests and Priests in general. So I hope that this kind of helped you guys. I hope that this answered a lot of questions for you all of like what's strong right now. There's definitely a lot of improvement for the PvP team to kind of look over I think that people in general, the PvP community, isn't quite enjoying this patch as much as they did in the Cruel season. I feel like a lot of people felt like the Cruel season, Legion Season 3, which was a lot more overall balanced and a lot, like, it had a pace to it, right? Whereas this feels like it's just damage, like you just do damage, and then you try to get CC sometimes, but mostly you don't because there's so many interrupts in the meta right now. And it doesn't feel like consistent, right? And it just feels like there's no pace to Arena. You just like do damage until somebody finally dies, and that's like the extent of Arena. I definitely hope that there is improvement in terms of the tuning of things. I think that there's a lot of classes out there that are bad that could be good, and then I also think that there's a lot of classes out there that are really good and shouldn't be that good. You know, I think maybe even mine's one of them. I'm not sure, but definitely some improvements to go over. I think that since Holinka's out of the ball game, right, since he left the team, the PvP team, I'm not sure if that affects the PvP tuning, but it definitely feels like things aren't being handled as fast as they were last patch. So just my 2 cents, I guess. But I don't know what goes on in the Blizzard headquarters, so there's no way like I could give a concrete reason for that. But I do appreciate you guys watching, guys. I hope that this wasn't boring. I hope that this helped a lot of you guys. And if it did, be sure to give a big thumbs up, and you can leave a comment down below with your thoughts as well. I'm definitely excited to hear your thoughts, if you have any over like the current meta, or if you're enjoying PvP in general. But thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow.